The TV show is done, but the books are not. Everyone's been on pins and needles for Winds of Winter. It's because there's been so long, a lot of people have begun to theorize. And there's clues in George's books that shows gives us some hints. But here's a clue not that many people are talking about. Or more importantly, this is a clue no one wants to go over. But we're going to show you. Hello, and welcome to this part of the pond, where it's the bullfrog and the one, the only, Newt.
Face reveal at 100,000 subscribers.
Here in the pond, when it comes to Game of Thrones, we stumbled on something very interesting that the fandom of the books haven't really they do talk about it, but not on the interesting light that it shows. And that is this. The family that everyone wants to hate. The family that everyone wants to die. House Frey is not going to die. It's actually going to grow in power. Each of our Game of Thrones videos, we are going to defend House Frey. We're going to defend this theory. And this video is probably going to be the most important video in our defense for House Frey. More importantly, Lord Walder Frey, the man that everyone hates even more. But I think Ramsay Snow and... Dang it, I know, we all hate him and I just forgot his name. The idiot blonde kid.
Every time I use it, it'll be like cutting off Ned Stark's head all over again.
Joffrey, yeah, thank you. Those two are top on the list that everyone hates, but Lord Frey is right up there. We're going to say we have the proof. He's not going to die. And the proof is in the pudding that rings like a bell, jingle bell to say. What do we mean? What the hell are we talking about? Well, to tell you about this interesting hell I put myself through because Newt pointed this out and we're down to this rabbit hole, but that's beside the point. This is our defense. Lord Walder Frey's defense is Jingle Bell. This character you don't meet in the show is far more important in the books. Why? The way how George presents the story. He writes in, why talk? Let's show. Pull up the clip, Newt. Notice that. The antler helm in the direwolf's mouth. The pups. The right number for all the Stark kids. The antler shoved up the direwolf's mouth. Well, what happened to Ned Stark when he tried to deal with House Baratheon, his best friend? It really did help him go ahead. Yes, that was a bad pun. George likes to write like this. Send off these omens / foreshadows / symbology.
That's a thinker.
And we found something like that for House Frey. And it's shown in the all too important The Red Wedding. If you notice in our playlist, if you ever go there, thank you very much. We are beginning with The Red Wedding because if you want to talk Frey, we have to talk Red Wedding. So once we're done with this, we'll be done with The Red Wedding. This is our last spot-ish. No, not really, but ish of The Red Wedding. But the most important piece of The Red Wedding, again, is the character Jingle Bell. The mentally challenged grandson of Walder Frey. What are we talking about? Well, we'll talk about him through the ways how the books introduce him. And that begins with prophecy. Because the Red Wedding wasn't actually random as it was in the show. Because in the books, there was a lot of prophecies. You see it in the Clash of Kings with Daenerys. Farther on, she came upon a feast of corpses, savagely slaughtered, As feasters lay strewn across overturned chairs and hacked trestle tables, asprawl in pools of congealing blood. Some had lost limbs, even heads. Severed hands clutched bloody cups, wooden spoons, roast fowl, heels of bread. In the throne above them sat a dead man with the head of a wolf. He wore an iron crown and held a leg of a lamb in one hand, as a king might hold a scepter, and his eyes followed Danny with mute appeal. We see that in Clash of Kings. And then in the Storm of Swords, we got this quote from, interestingly enough, Stannis's personal fool called Patchface. Fool's blood, king's blood, blood on the maiden's thigh, but chains for the guests and chains for the bridegroom, I. He points that out. And when you go later more into the books of the various prophecies surrounding the Red Wedding, we get to the ghost of... Dang, I just said it! Highheart, thank you. With the ghost of Highheart, she says two different prophecies. The first one, I dreamt of an old roaring river and a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted, with red tears on her cheeks, but her eyes did open. Oh, I woke from the terror. All this I dreamt and more. We get that first prophecy. And then the second prophecy. Notice this, the second one. I dreamt of a wolf howling in the rain, but no one heard his grief. The dwarf woman was saying, I dreamt such a clangor, I thought my head might burst. Drums and horns and pipes and screams, but the stoutest sound was the little bells. Okay, there's various prophecies. Theon even had a dream during the Clash of Kings book about the prophecies. There's actually quite a few. One of those prophecies we talked about, Patchface, talked about the fool's blood. In the Ghost of Highheart's second prophecy, talked about the saddest sound was the bells. Two prophecies about Walder Frey's fool. Because the fool is Aegon Jinglebell Frey. And once we finally get to meet this character, this is his description. At his feet sat somewhat a younger version of himself, a stooped thin man of 50, who was costly garb in blue wool and grained satin, was strangely accented by a crown and collar, ornamented by tiny brass bells. The likeness between him and the Lord was striking, save for the eyes. Lord Frey, small, dim, suspicious. The others, large, amiable, and vacant. Catelyn recalled that one of Lord Walder's brood had fathered a half-wit long years ago. Notice that. Okay, we notice a small establishment of patterns. All these prophecies, we get two prophecies. And the second prophecy of Jingle Bell is the second prophecy given by the Ghost of Highheart. So we got two, and a two within that two. Whew, okay, this is gonna get nuts. When we got to the introduction of Aegon Jinglebell Frey, his description depicts him as a younger version of Walder Frey. So basically, the two are eerily the same. The book points it out, other than one is younger but has no wit, but he can walk around and dance, while the older one is sharp as a whip, but he can't really do anything physical. Okay, this is where things are going to get very interesting, all right? If we go to the line of succession of the twins, okay, that's another two. Aegon Jingle Bell Frey is the second son of Stevron Frey. One of the strings that ties into the Red Wedding. Stevron Frey died in the Westerlands, and a few days after he died, Robb heard about his younger brothers dying. Of course, he had two younger brothers left. Again, another two. And in that moment of grief, the lady of the castle, well, the daughter, Jane Westerling, not like in the show, wanted to comfort Robb. After that comfort, he felt like he had no choice but to marry her. That dishonors the Freys, because the marriage pact up between Robb and Walder Frey was that he was going to marry. Well, now he can't. And his son died. All right. Feel like we need a map to map this out, because again, Stevron had a first wife, Ryman. Stevron had a second wife. The firstborn from that is Aegon Jingle Bell Frey. Now, not only Aegon is the firstborn child, but also the secondborn child of Stevron Frey from Stevron's second marriage. Jingle Bell is actually one of two Aegon Freys. There's Aegon Jingle Bell Frey, the fool, and who's second in line, technically, to inherit the twins, which is also a 2. But we also have Aerys Frey's son, Aegon Frey, who is one of 2 boys. Aegon, who is the oldest, and Rhaegar, the second son. And we have these 2 Aegons. One's a fool, meant to inherit. The other one went rogue. We know nothing about him other than, in the appendix, he's an outlaw. But when you look into Storm of Swords appendix and the Bannerhood Without Brothers, there's no mention of him. Yeah, that's a lot of 2s. That's a lot of 2s.
2, ha! And now for your number pleasure, 2 tubas in 2 2s.
House Frey has symbolic metaphors, maybe foreshadows, because it's too much of a coinkydink.
Coincidence? I think not!
With all these 2s and everything laid out in place, but most importantly, the way how the character Aegon Jingle Bell Frey is described, he is one of 2 Walder Freys in description. We kind of talked about that before. What does this all mean? Seeing the information and the fact that a lot of the fans want Walder Frey dead, we have to remember, when does George care about the fans? George is all about his story. One of the reasons why the books are taking so long to write, Winds of Winter, probably because he wants to make it be just right. Take a look what he just laid out in the Red Wedding. What we just went through. What does it mean? Walder Frey isn't going to die. We saw him die. It was Jingle Bell who died. He died so Walder can live. Things get a little bit more interesting. This is the reason why we started this whole thing. Newt pointed this out. Notice the map of Westeros. In Winds of Winter, the book, it's a guarantee the North is going to fail. What we got in the show isn't going to happen. Winterfell is going to fall. The North will fall. The White Walkers are going to go through the North like a sponge, people. Not a knife through cheese, but a sponge. Why? The North has been through a lot of battles. That's a lot of dead. The White Walkers are going to pass that wall, and they're going to grow in numbers even more. Stannis, the Freys, the Boltons, everyone in the north are going to have no choice but to retreat. The first line of defense for Westeros was the wall. Gone. And the choke point in the neck, it's a good defense if you're going from south to north, but not north to south. So everyone in the north, the closest place of refuge that they could find when they are fleeing the north is where? People, George has put this down on plain sight for all of us to see. It's the twins. The twins is the second line. The twins are second line to all the Freys. What does this mean? Who rules the twins will save Westeros or give Westeros a little break. Anyone fleeing from the north, that's their rest spot. And Walder Frey can control his family. They may be out of whack and out of sync and just bygone stupid, but he knows how to treat his family. He will never sell any one of them out. So when the North comes crying for help, the fandom, you want Walder Frey there. He knows how to control his kids. He knows how to handle with people. And more than that, he knows how to bargain.
I've come to bargain.
What is happening?
He's actually a lot more bigger strategist than everyone gives him credit for. We'll have that video later on. The theory of twos also builds up the prophecy of Hodor. I have a little theory for that. But until next time, whether it's going to be for our next Game of Thrones video, it could be either A, the theory of twos and how does it affect Hodor, or the fall of the North and how that is a guarantee. And this is nuts, people. This is a clue hiding in plain sight. And no one is caring about it or watching it. Heck, again, the clue is right there on the map. And we have not even realized it yet. What does this mean? How much more is this going to go into? Well, we're going to drag you down this rabbit hole. Because it gets far more crazier than that. So, until that time comes, this is the Bullfrog and the Newt signing out. Oh my gosh! So many toes! And then we can show that because I already read it. Yes!